All right. Hi, everyone. This is Mr. P again with our third video. If you haven't watched the first and second, please, you should go back and kind of watch them in order. So here we are with our third video where we're going to talk about the really difficult topic of lynching, terror, and Black resistance to that. This video in particular is going to focus mostly on lynching and white terror and mass lynchings. We'll touch on resistance, but most of the discussion of resistance to this is going to be in video 4, the next video, lesson 4. So, take care of yourselves as you're pacing yourself and watching this video. It's some of the content is not easy to engage with. I don't put particularly graphic images on these slides, but the stories are nonetheless difficult to engage with. So we'll first ask, how was physical violence used as a tool of social, political, and economic oppression? So specifically, how was lynching used as a tool? And then, like I said in video 4, and a little bit at the end of this video, how Black communities resist action. So first, you want to just have a clear understanding of what lynching is. And we need to be clear that lynching is more than just homicide or murder. It is condemning someone to death on the whims of a mob or a whole community, outside of the legal process, right? Without a judge, without any trial. This is a different kind of thing than just a murder, or even a murder with a particular purpose. This is used as a form of terror, and it is used, obviously outside of it's saying that this person deserves to die because they did something wrong, but we're not going to try them because we know that what they did is not actually, wrong or something like that. So lynching is used in that way during this time period. Lynching has a long history prior to its use as a form of racial terror. And so, I'm not going to go kind of into depth on that. You're welcome to kind of research that. But lynching does have a history, a longer history in global history and global studies around its role as a public spectacle, of kind of, in scaring people to not do something wrong. It becomes a tool for racialized terror during this time period. Okay. And that's what we're going to talk about. That's the part of it that we're going to focus on. All right. So before you move on, I'm going to ask that you pause the video, and I want you to watch this video that is linked here. It's a 2.5 minute video, animated video telling the story of Private James Neely and the lynching that happened in 1898, after he got back from the Spanish-American War. So take a moment to pause, watch that. So hopefully you've paused and watched that. Just a couple things that I hope you noticed in that video. One, Private James Neely served in the Spanish-American War in a Black, I believe it was an infantry unit. Right. Remember, Black folks are serving in every U.S. war, starting with the Revolutionary War. When he got back, the audacity, right, for him to, the boldness with which he asserted his dignity when he was, paying for what he wanted to purchase at that store, led to him challenging that white store clerk was what white folks reacted to. So they used, and in that case, right, he was shot. Lynching is not done always by what we tend to think, which is hanging. And so James Neely helps us understand that, right, lynching occurred in many ways and was often a tool to keep someone in their place within the racial hierarchy. So lynching becomes a tool to enforce Jim Crow segregation in many ways. So I want to talk about the work of Monroe Nathan Work, who does a lot of work documenting lynching during the 1930s and 40s. You can learn more about him by following this link. That'll be optional. Monroe Nathan Work was a sociologist. He studied sociology at the University of Chicago, and he used it as a tool. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about resistance. Sociology becomes a tool for Black intellectuals to combat racist caricature, to combat racist violence by documenting it, and also by demonstrating who Black people were in reality. So one of the ways in which he documented the experiences of Black people was by documenting data on lynching. So much of the data we have on lynching comes from the work of Black sociologist Monroe Nathan Work. And he did this while teaching at the Tuskegee Institute. Sidebar, another amazing Black sociologist, W.E.B. Du Bois, uses it to tell the stories of Black people as they actually lived, and he does this in the study of Philadelphia Negro. So you can see here Du Bois's map of you'll notice South Street, 11th, 10th, 9th. This was the Black neighborhood of Philadelphia, here just north of South Street. We know, today the demographics have changed, but Du Bois basically went, door to door, interviewing and studying Black experience at the time. We're not going to go into depth on this study, but I just wanted to make you aware of it, that he color coded people by class, whether they were working class, wealthy, middle class, and you'll notice that this neighborhood is mixed class. Black neighborhoods historically and today tend to be, or certain Black neighborhoods tend to be very mixed class, in part because Black folks are often prohibited from white neighborhoods, no matter how high up the economic ladder they move. And so, we see that here in his study in the early 1900s. There's some issues. He labels some folks as having the criminal element. There are ways in which he kind of occupies certain, reproduces aspects of racist ideas in this study. But this study is profoundly progressive and radical in the sense that its aim is to show Black people as they are, not as white people see them as. That's its aim. He's not trying to, the people who commissioned his study at Penn wanted him to do a study that basically explained why Black people were criminal, why they were, basically to justify racist caricature in many ways. Du Bois refused. He said, no, this is not how Black people are. Black people are diverse and fully human, meaning the range of flaws and the range of like any other racial group. That's, Dr. Kendi's great insight is that anti-racism says, members of a racial group are diverse in all respects. And so Du Bois's purpose here is to show that diversity of Black Philadelphia at the time. And so, when you read this study, it's quite rich in exploring the kind of range of Black experience. And that was Du Bois's purpose, to show that the Black experience was had a diversity of experience and wasn't contained to any one particular class or one particular experience. So sociology, right? Du Bois, Monroe Nathan Work, sociology, and as someone who studied sociology in college, is in many ways an outgrowth of the Black intellectual project of the early 1900s, which was to combat racist caricature. We tend to not give credit to folks like Monroe Work and W.E.B. Du Bois for really establishing sociology during this time period, and that's we owe a lot of credit in this field to the work of Black sociologists. So that's my sidebar on the role of sociology. We're going to get back to documenting lynching of lynching. I realize at this point that we're not going to finish with what I wanted to finish in these 15 minutes. So I'll be making another video in a moment, but we do have time for the last 5 minutes of this video to kind of explore this map. And I encourage you after this video to explore this map on your own. So you'll see here, this is a screenshot. So I'm just going to take a moment to open this up, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. Excuse me. So this is a map of white supremacist mob violence and lynching from, and you'll notice 1835 to, I'm worried if I X out this box, you will, you won't be able to, or it'll stop recording the screen. So I'm not going to exit out, but there's a key over here, and I'll just explain to you the key when we look here. So if you're looking at this map here, you're going to notice there's a lot of dots, and you'll notice from 1835 to 1960-ish, the dots become really crowded during the 1850s, and then especially during this era of 1919 that's known as Red Summer. We'll talk about that in the next video. And so this is the era of lots of individual lynchings and mass lynchings. Each of these dots you can click on. Each of these dots represents somebody who was murdered, killed through mob violence, through lynching. And so a few things to pay attention to. It is color-coded by race. And this is something we tend not to talk about. All of these orange dots, these are Black people who are killed. The majority of people killed by mob violence during this over 100-year history are Black folks. However, you'll notice concentrations of yellow, golden yellow dots here in Texas, parts of Texas, Arizona, and California. These are Latinx folks who are murdered by mob violence. And these clusters of red dots and a few here in California, these are mostly Chinese folks, but Asian folks in general, who are murdered by mob violence. The blue dots here are actually Sicilians, Italians, very few, but at the beginning of white immigration during this time period, you'll notice the blue dots here around 1880s. Italians were not considered white. The Irish weren't. Southern Europeans weren't. Whiteness is a construct that more and more white folks are invited into because of their white skin. But initially, there's certain categories of European who are considered not white. And so you'll see that, they were targeted in various parts of the country. So like I said, I'm just going to show you how you can explore this, and I encourage you to explore it on your own. But if you click, right, you'll see sometimes we have folks who are unnamed, and it'll tell you what led to that person's death. Here we see a gang of white farmers and schoolboys were robbed, murdered, and who they had robbed, murdered, and mutilated over 30 Chinese gold miners at Deep Creek on Snake River. So that's what that cluster is. Each of these clusters has, here at 79 Chinese men were actually burned, and 28 ended up being killed by the mob. So that's what that cluster is. You'll notice here we have these golden colors refer to Mexican folks who are killed, and then each of these orange dots refers to Black folks who had been killed. You'll notice lynchings occur in the North too. There are 4 here in Pennsylvania. I encourage you to kind of go to this and read the stories of those who were murdered here in Philadelphia during the 1918 Philadelphia riot of mob violence, the Chester race riot. You can take a look at that in 1917. So you can read in more detail. I'm going to let you kind of do that on your own. But this map documents about 5,000 lynchings during this 100-year history that affect multiple racial groups. So at this point, we're about to hit 15 minutes. Like I said, this, go at your own pace. Explore as much as you're interested in or able to, and we'll finish our study of lynching in video 4, the next video.